The college football playoff rankings come out on Tuesday, so it's prediction time. Let's see where you think the college football playoff committee is going to go with these debut rankings. Where do you think Georgia is going to come in at? What do you think is going to happen? But also, what do you think are the top 4 teams in college football?
Yeah, so let's just start with what I think is going to happen with the committee. What I think is going to happen, which changed from 48 hours ago after this weekend.
Yep.
I think that Georgia is going to be the one on Tuesday night, and I didn't think that before this weekend. I thought that there is a case for Ohio State, and the reason I'm saying that is because I'm thinking the way the committee thinks and the way that we've seen them think the last couple of years. A year ago this time, what happened? They put Tennessee at 1 after a lot of hype and after a big win that ended up not being as good as a win as we thought it was at the time. And all that hype train, they put Tennessee at 1 and they put a really, really, really good Georgia team that didn't show you a lot of reasons not to move them down. They moved them down to 3.
Yeah.
What happened a few days later? They got proven wrong. I'm gonna err on the side of they watched the tape, they're gonna go back and they're gonna fix that, and they're gonna put Georgia at 1 on Tuesday night. I'm gonna say that they're gonna put Michigan at 2 just because of the dominance.
Okay.
Ohio State at 3 because of the resume, and I think that Florida State will probably be.
That's your 4, right?
Would probably be at 4. The thing about Ohio State and Florida State is I think you can make the same flip-flop argument between them. I think that the committee will look at them pretty similarly.
See, I see it a little different. Same top 4, but I think Ohio State probably has the 2 best wins. I think this is straight resume-based. Well, who are your best wins? And I think their win over Notre Dame and their win over Penn State might be enough to have them at number 1. They covered against a good Maryland team. They went on the road and beat Wisconsin by 14. I can totally see Ohio State being number 1, and I think that's where they're going to be, just based on those 2 big wins.
So you think it'll be just like last year?
A little bit. And that's where I put Florida State at number 2. They've got some good quality wins as well. The early one over LSU looks better by the week as LSU improves. Went on the road to beat Clemson. They dominated a ranked Duke team at home. I think they're good. They've got a lot of good players. They passed the eye test for me, and I think they have some quality wins. It wouldn't surprise me if they were number 2. I have Georgia at number 3 because their best win is over Kentucky. Kentucky was ranked, and Georgia just throttled them. Maybe I would move Georgia up if Florida was ranked, and they just beat a ranked Florida team by 20 points. But I just think if we're looking at the resume, I think Ohio State and Florida State have done more, right? Beat better teams overall than Georgia has. And this will all play itself out. And then I have Michigan at number 4 because they haven't played anyone. They've beat every team solidly. They're doing what they need to do, but they beat all.
This is your prediction for what they're going to do.
This is what I think is going to happen. I think Georgia's the best team in the country, but if I'm saying what do I think the rankings are going to look like, I could see Ohio State, Florida State, Georgia, Michigan.
I could see them having Michigan down. Just because of the resume.
It's nothing. There's nothing on it.
I could see them putting Michigan at 3 or 4. In fact, that probably makes more sense, actually.
Yeah.
It probably does make more sense that's what happened.
But
it seems like the voters throughout this whole season started to vote more and more. All the AP voters started to vote more and more for Michigan as the year went on. And Georgia was losing those first place votes. Now the AP poll won't matter as much.
Right.
And those are not the people that are on the college football playoff committee. But the reason why I think we might see Michigan at 1 or 2 is just because of kind of what the national consensus was. But resume-wise, yeah. What the committee has done, they would have Florida State and Ohio State ahead of Michigan.
I think outside of that, you'd have to have Washington above Oregon because they beat Oregon.
Yeah.
But Oregon looks like the better team right now. If they were to play on Saturday in Eugene, most people are probably taking the Ducks. So it's interesting to see where that plays out. Alabama's still a really good team. Texas only has 1 loss, but they lost to Oklahoma. Do you keep Oklahoma ahead of Texas even though they just lost to Kansas? There's a lot going on. Great season. This has been a wild season for sure, but if Georgia takes care of business and they go undefeated, win the SEC, they go to number one. I don't care who's the number one at the time. Undefeated, Ohio State, undefeated, Michigan. I don't care. If Georgia goes undefeated, they should be number one because they're going to beat some really good teams down the stretch if they do win those games.
Yeah, I mean, a 13-0 SEC champion should almost certainly be the undisputed number one team in the country, unless someone else was just 13-0 and looked way more explosive and everything.
Who do you think the best teams are, though?
How I would rank it?
Ryan's rankings.
Georgia would be my one. And then I'd put... Who I think the better team is, I think Michigan's a better team than Ohio State.
Okay.
And I hate that we haven't watched Michigan against a good team yet. But I think that they're probably better than Ohio State, slightly.
Yeah. They just haven't shown any weaknesses.
Yeah.
They haven't played against anyone, but they look dominant every week against the Northwesterns and the Indianas and the Purdues
I think
and
they're
the Illinois.
a really complete team. It's not really. I don't think they have any holes. They're pretty good across the board. I'd put Florida State at 3.
I think Florida State's good.
And then I'd put Ohio State at 4. And then at Washington, I think is kind of the obvious 5.
Yeah, I still think Texas is a good, solid team. Still think Alabama's a good, solid team. Alabama can beat Georgia. I think Georgia's more complete. But if they're playing 10 times, Georgia probably beats Alabama 6 out of 10 times. I think Alabama gets some wins in there. That kid, he can make one, like, wow NFL throw every week. Milroe. But the other 75% of his passes are just...
They keep winning games, they're going to continue to climb the rankings a little bit, but they have to win out to make the college football playoff. They've got to run the table, make it to the SEC championship game, and then beat Georgia or Missouri in that game to make the college football playoff. But
I think the 4 that we talked about are set.
Yeah, I think that
Washington has moved themselves out.
Yeah, they've fallen out of it, just the way they played the last couple of weeks. Coming off of a huge emotional win over Oregon, what that looked like possibly the best one of the better wins in the country this season, and they just start to fall off. The offense just doesn't look as crisp, and they're just allowing like all these points to who was it?
Stanford.
A terrible football team. No hate on Stanford, but they're not good.
That receiver's really good.
That one receiver
that went wild
can play on
Colorado.
Sundays. Number 13, I think.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name, but you can play on Sundays, dude.
Yeah. Penn State is out with their one loss. They've got Michigan. Maybe that's next week. Michigan has to play someone good eventually because it's November.
I think it's in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
I think that's November 11th.
Yeah. So they're finally playing someone, but they're better than Penn State.
But Penn State did not look hot against a bad Indiana team who played Ohio State a little hard too.
Yeah.
So maybe Indiana's got some fight in them, but
I do think this season is up for grabs. And while Georgia may not be as good as they were last year, 2 years ago, they're still one of the favorites to win the whole thing because Ohio State doesn't have excellent quarterback play. We still don't know how good Michigan really is. Florida State seems like a year or two away still. And then Washington's Washington. I don't think they can, if they get into the Final Four, that they would be able to do much. And am I missing?
Yeah, look, Florida State would be my clear-cut number 2 if they played better against Clemson and Boston College. But it's hard for me to ignore.
They've got good players, a lot of good players.
They should have lost both of those games.
Should have lost to Clemson.
Both of those teams are really bad, and that makes me kind of weary. Georgia has had a couple games where they didn't look like the number 1 team in the country, but there hasn't been a single game where you could say they should have lost. You could be borderline about Auburn, but they controlled that game in the second half against Auburn for the most part.
I think Florida State and Florida State has uglier wins than Georgia, and I think Washington has certainly had 2 ugly wins back to back. Georgia's kind of slow start against South Carolina and Auburn. They're fading away a little bit, especially as good as they're playing right now. If they continue, they're going to forget all about that game, even though they shouldn't, because Georgia came from behind and won those 2 games and should get credit for fighting through adversity and winning those games the way they did, because that's what a number 1 team in the country does when they do start off slow. They come back and rip your heart out, which is what they did, especially to Auburn. On the road, it's a quality SEC win. But I'm with you. I think Georgia is the best team in the country. But I think when the rankings come out, would not be surprised to see Florida State and Ohio State above them, in my opinion.
It wouldn't be shocking. Man, this is the last time I'm giving the committee the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to say that they're going to have Georgia at 1 on Tuesday after they looked really good against the Gators. That's my take. You got anything else?
Nope.
You out?